Before we get started, we'd love for you to take a quick survey that would help us improve the Intellectual Agrarian podcast. Just go to intellectualagrarian.com/survey or click the link in the show notes. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Intellectual Agrarian podcast, where we talk philosophy from the farm. I'm your host, Terrence Lehue. Today, we're talking with Charlotte Smith from Champoeg Creamery and 3 Cow Marketing. Together, we'll be talking about how Charlotte started farming, how farmers can determine their dream customer, how to set up your farm's marketing off right in the new year, and much, much more. This is a great episode of Charlotte with plenty of practical applications for a farm or small business. So please, enjoy this, the first episode of 2019. Charlotte Smith, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Terrence. I appreciate it.
Before we go too far, this is one of the things I always love to talk about, but why is your marketing business called 3 Cow Marketing?
Great question. Well, I sell raw milk in Oregon, and we have this really weird law. You might know that raw milk laws can vary from state to state. And in Oregon, we can sell raw milk if we have 3 cows or fewer. So when I was brainstorming a name for my marketing business, I'm pretty sure I was in the shower, as all good ideas come to you when you're in the shower. And it was like 3 Cow Marketing. And I jumped out of the shower and I called my daughter and she thought it was perfect. So that's where it comes. It's inspired by our unusual law in Oregon.
I'm just curious because I'm from Wisconsin, and we've had Elizabeth Rich on the show, who obviously does a lot with milk laws here, especially with raw milk. But why is it Oregon passed the law for 3 cows? Is there any kind of story to that?
Well, there is. Back in 1999, raw milk was available in retail stores, retail. And then people weren't really this was almost 20 years ago. Raw milk hadn't caught on. And they decided there was some sanitation issues at a big dairy. And they decided, let's just outlaw raw milk. And voters, none of us had really heard about raw milk yet, so it is one of those laws that got passed to outlaw raw milk unless you have 3 cows or fewer and people buy it on the farm. And it kind of came about because that gave the retired dairy farmer who still wanted to have a backyard milk cow the option to do that and sell a little bit of the milk on the side because cows produce so much milk. So it was really, when they made the law, it wasn't even intended to be a business model. It was just to have an exemption for the retired dairy farmer. But it taught me a big lesson when I studied what happened, that once you give up your rights as a citizen, it is very hard to get them back. So I've learned, let's not give up even if I don't think I'm going to use a product or something in the U.S., I don't want to give up my right to it yet, because now I've been working for 10 years to try to expand that law, and it's very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess it makes sense in some ways, because I'm sure one of the primary concerns they had was that these huge dairies that have thousands of cows producing milk, you have the possibility, a lot higher risk of contamination. So from a risk-based analysis, I can see why they did it that way. But how much milk does an average cow produce in your neck of the woods?
Sure. Well,
obviously, it depends on the type of cow. It
depends on the breed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to milk Jersey cows.
Oh, Jerseys.
Or a brown Swiss, or a combination, Yes, and my favorite cow is half brown Swiss, half Jersey, because of the rich cream, and then brown Swiss give a little more production, so it can raise. But I would say middle of the lactation, they're going to give you 3 to 5 gallons a day average, and it varies from cow to cow. And just so I could address the first part of your question there, when you said for sanitation reasons, I just want to point out that 20 years ago, when they passed that law, technology has progressed so much that you can tell immediately if raw milk is safe for consumption. We have technology that can tell you that the milk I produce today is safe to sell today. 20 years ago, they didn't have it. So now it's like, oh, shoot, these laws are outdated. We have technology that makes it safe. Let's try to update these laws. So I just wanted to slip that in there in case anyone's working on outdated information.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's something I think that's always interesting. A lot of these laws we write kind of don't, what's the word? They don't adjust very well time-wise. I mean, it's kind of like art. Some levels of art doesn't transition well in time. Laws are not exactly art, but they also don't tend to transition too well in time because of updated technology.
Yep, you're exactly right. And I was recently in Washington, D.C. doing some lobbying for farmers, and we were visiting the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. And in the wall inscription, they talk about how the laws, their idea and their plan was that laws would adjust as society adjusted. And I sat there looking at that thinking, wait, we're not doing that. So our founding fathers had intended for laws to adjust, but they don't very well.
Mm-hmm. Well, as much fun as it would be to continue delving into legal ramifications, I guess I should ask you a really important question that we like to ask on the show. Can you share about how and why you started farming and tell us about your farm?
Sure. I grew up on a farm, and it was very hard work, and driving tractor 8 hours a day from the age of 8 and moving irrigation pipe at 4:30 in the morning when I was 11 years old. So I actually did not enjoy farming. And then to top it all off, my dad's farm went bankrupt when I was 14. And I thought farming was a ridiculous way to try to make money or a silly career. So I swore I was going to go to college and never come back to the farm. But then, like so many people, I had kids. And as my kids got older and we lived in the suburbs, I wanted to get them back out on the farm. So we started searching for land. And about the same time, we discovered raw milk because my kids had severe eczema. That's a whole different podcast. And we drank raw milk and it went away. So I thought, I want to have my own raw milk dairy because our farmers kept going out of business. So that's when I started Champoeg Creamery and raw milk dairy, eggs. We really started, like so many farmers do, raising really good food for ourselves and a little bit of the community, and word spread. So we have added pastured chickens to that and turkeys and things over the years. But the raw milk is our foundational, our signature product that we've been doing for 10 years. And it started out as a way to feed my family first and our community along with us.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good model for self-reliance too, which is always exciting to see a farm go about.
Absolutely. Yes.
When you talked about, it's just really interesting when we discussed a little bit this pre-show, the idea of a farm not being able to consume its own products is kind of astounding. We had a phrase we used on an interview with Scott Hebert, real farmers don't starve, because it's just such a diametric difference. It's polar opposite of what we think. Farmers raise food, so they should never have to starve.
Mm-hmm. 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 That's really interesting because, go ahead.
I was going to say, so when you came back to farming, were there any specific thoughts or ideas that you entered it with, having had that previous farm experience?
Yes, so many. The very first idea was, I want a farm, but it is going to look nothing like my dad's farm. Because when my dad went bankrupt, he was a commodity grower. And we were hungry for 4 years, all through high school. We ate beans and rice and didn't have meat because we didn't have, you can't go out and eat wheat or grass seed or sugar beet seed or field corn. So that was so ironic. And it didn't even occur to me at that time until I was an adult and and thought, wow, I lived on a farm and we had no food. We were going hungry. And so, yes, that was a very important when I started my farm. I wanted to make sure that, number one, I was going to raise things that my family could eat and enjoy. That was, if I was going to work that hard, we were going to enjoy the fruits of our labor. And then the other thing is I did not want to be a commodity farm because I wanted to sell direct to consumer to help people, but also to be able to charge a fair price. Because I remember being a kid sitting at the table with my dad, hearing that wheat it was a bumper crop of wheat, and therefore the price dropped. And he ended, whenever we had a bumper crop of anything, we would still make no money or make less money. And then when prices were high, it was the year that your crop failed, So
Mm-hmm.
I learned those things in the background of my childhood and thought my model will look nothing like his. So I sort of learned what I didn't want to do.
Well, and that's so important. We've talked previously about the commoditization of food, and that's such a danger because there's such an art form to food. Each location has, especially in your neck of the woods, I mean, you guys have a great resource, and a lot of farmers that are looking at it as a local experience versus, okay, I just need the nearest thing that's palatable.
Yes, right. Yeah, we're in a very farmer friendly state, and we have a lot of small artisan type farmers. So it's very much a kind of a lifestyle for a lot of people, and even non-farming families.
So we're going to talk a little bit here about marketing, which I have to tell you is one of my favorite topics because when I took that in college courses, it was my favorite. I scored the highest on it, so I'll pat myself on the back. But what is a good working definition of marketing that you would use?
Serving your customers. Marketing is giving and serving. And that's it. When you come at it from that mindset, it all falls into place. It all works.
So I definitely want...
And a lot of...
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say that a lot of farmers who meet me for the first time or come across my book, that's a 180-degree shift from what most people think marketing is, which is like how to get your products out in front of people. And it's not about that. It's about giving and serving.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of segues into something I wanted to discuss here, which is what are some of the common misconceptions farmers have when they think of marketing? Because, I mean, if you don't look at it from that angle, it can be very intimidating. I mean, they see, what was the show, Mad Men, and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, many of them don't know what the word marketing means. And so it's almost like a foreign word, so they avoid it. So and also most of us, me included, we get into farming to maybe be sustainable or support our own family or feed our own family. And we don't often think about the business side of it until we realize, whoa, this is a very expensive endeavor. I need to start making some money. And they start scrambling to try to blast, become a giant billboard, whatever that might look like. So they often, when I first meet them, have that misconception that it's about just trying to get their products almost like they have a megaphone and they're yelling into the internet or at the farmer's market about buy our stuff. And they're often intimidated just by the word marketing alone because they don't know what it means. And the other part of that is many of them come to me and say, hey, I love to farm, but I'm terribly introverted and I hate people. So how am I supposed to market my products? So it's kind of a combination of all those things.
Now, as reading in your book, Farm Marketing from the Heart, you say that being at a farmer's market isn't a marketing plan, which I've actually been at farmer's markets, so I totally understand what you're saying. But for those that think, well, of course, I'm at a farmer's market, that's my marketing plan, what are they missing and where could they potentially be wrong?
Mm-hmm. So I love farmers markets. I don't want anyone to think I'm dissing farmers markets. They are great because they have a steady stream. If the market manager has done their job, they've got a steady stream of people through there. And I want to point out that farmers markets, Facebook page, Instagram account, Craigslist, those are all marketing channels. Mm-hmm. They are not a marketing plan. They're a marketing channel. And the marketing channel should feed or funnel into your foundation, which is, you've read it over and over in the book, your website and your email marketing. So even if you're at the farmer's market, you should be making sure you have time or an extra person on hand so that every customer who passes by, you can engage in a conversation with them. Because remember, you can't serve them or give to them unless you engage with them. So you're engaging with them, and you've got to get their email and get them on your email list. And I teach people how to have a free gift on your website so they get on your email list and they get that free, and they're willing to exchange their email for that free gift. But if you just go there and you think the farmer's market is my marketing plan, those people may not ever come back to your booth, because they come to your booth, they buy something, the transaction is in the moment and it ends, and they go away and they never come back. For instance, we have lots of farmers markets here in the Portland area, and a farmers market, there might be 4 vendors selling mushrooms. And I know this because we don't raise mushrooms, so I always go there looking to buy mushrooms because I love them and I have to go seek them out. And because I'm a marketer and teach marketing, I'm always aware that not one of those mushroom vendors tries to build a relationship with me and then get my email to continue that relationship after the farmer's market is over, so that I come seek them out next time I go to the market. So that's what you're trying to do. If you have a transaction at a market and then the customer goes away and you've not done what you can to build a connection with them and get them on your email list to continue relationship building, it was a once and done. You can just count on that was a transaction in the moment. You might have made a couple bucks, but the real investment, the real money to be made is when you get those customers coming to the market to seek you out again and again, time after time. You're only going to do that if you get a way to connect with them offline. And that's not, they aren't just going to remember to come back to you. And Instagram and Facebook have algorithms that make sure they don't see you consistently. So I know that's a long explanation, but hopefully that helps you and everyone understand that it's not good enough to just go to a farmer's market and think you're going to sell enough product to build a profitable, sustainable farm.
Mm-hmm. And you're so right. I've visited lots of farmers markets. I used to work farmers markets, and it's interesting to see the difference in people, because you have some that look at it like they are there just like a grocery store. They're there with the product, transaction, that's it. If we see you again, great. If we don't, who cares? And I noticed that happens with more businesses that have employees rather than farmers. And I understand sometimes why they need to send an employee instead of having the farmer there. But the farmer has more skin in the game to actually develop a relationship versus an employee who's just like, who cares how much longer it's cold outside? So
true.
At what point did you start working with helping farmers market their products? When did 3 Cow Marketing first be conceived in your mind?
It was a couple years. I started my farm 10 years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes. We love it. Two of my 3 kids have now moved out of the house. So it's interesting how that shifts things on the farm. But I started the farm 10 years ago, and raw milk on a small scale, like when you're only allowed 2 or 3 cows, there is no economy of scale. So it's very labor intensive and very expensive. And so because I wasn't going to end up like my dad, I was very motivated to calculate what price I had to charge in order to be profitable. And it was often double the price that anybody else in the area was selling the raw milk for. And I was able to sell it at that price and have a waiting list of people lined up for the time we had a calf, and your milk production doubles in one day. You need to double your customer base. So my farmer friends were saying, how in the world are you able to charge $20 a gallon at that time, and we can only charge 10, and we only live a few miles from you. What is it you're doing? So I would just say, oh, come over to the house. We'll have some coffee. I'll tell you what I'm doing. So I just started sharing it one farmer at a time. Like a husband and wife would come over. Our toddlers would run around and play, and we'd talk about marketing. And then I thought, it occurred to me that I'm not going to help very many farmers. And I was saying the same thing over and over again. So it was obvious that I need to get 10 or 20 farmers in the room and give the same information. So then I took 2014, the whole year, and I wrote down everything I did and was learning about, I stay on top of what is working in marketing today. And so I packaged that all up, and I moved it to an online course. So I teach it online, and now I have students in, I don't know, probably 6 countries.
Wow.
Taking my class. Yeah. And it's fascinating because relationship-based marketing that I teach works across cultures. So I have a student right now from England, and she says, I don't know if what you teach is working with me because Brits are so standoffish. And so I told her there will be some things, let's brainstorm how you can adjust it to your culture. But I said, it's humanity that we strive and we seek connection in life. That's across all cultures. We seek connection. I'm simply teaching people how to build that connection and maintain it consistently in order to serve them by giving them your product, which is going to help them in some way, whatever that way may be, even if it's just getting a great dinner on the table for your family.
So let's kind of take that as an example here, because I think it's the maintaining that so many farmers struggle with. Because when you're at the farmer's market, you're talking to the customer and you're just hitting it right off, and then the customer leaves. What should that farmer have done, or what should they do to maintain the relationship they kind of started?
There you go. That's the key. So a lot of people will say, well, I'm really working hard to build relationships. I have all kinds of great conversations. But once they leave the market, you're not top of mind. So, and it's especially important in Oregon, we're seasonal. So our CSA farmers, they end often in October and they don't start up again till March. And they will tell me that, I lost 80% of my customers from last year. They didn't sign up when I sent out the email in March. And I explain to them, and we teach inside our class, we work with our students to really understand that you need to nurture that relationship all winter long by sending them an email once a month. And farmers often, before they know me, will think, well, I only need to email them when I have something for sale. But what that does is it makes them feel like, well, they're only emailing me when they want money from me. And this is subconscious, of course.
Of course.
And in the meantime, they met 2 other people who sell grass-fed beef. So they end up buying their quarter share from the person who's top of mind at that time. But I teach people a strategy using email marketing. I teach them how to build a website for free. And because you don't need a fancy website, you just need a website to capture their email, have a place when you're in conversation with them to get their name and email. I even say, pull your phone out at the farmer's market, have an iPad there, get their name and email in your system. They'll get their free gift. And then you can email marketing systems. You can pre-schedule your emails. So for instance, since I have raw milk, which is perishable, my customers get an email once a week. But in the off season, you want to email people to keep in touch with them a minimum of once a month. It seems like if you go more than a month, people forget about you. And they forget, now, why am I on this farm's email list? I can't remember. But if you keep in consistent contact with them, minimum once a month, year round, when you do have something to sell, when it's time to come back to the farmer's market or sign up for the CSA or order that half a beef, they're clamoring at the bit to give you money because you've worked so hard to maintain that relationship all winter long, for instance.
Now, in your book, you also talk about forming a dream customer. Now, where should farmers start if they think, okay, my ideal customer, is the person that walks up to me and wants to buy my product. That's not what you're referring to. So can you explain what a dream customer is and then how farmers can form the correct statue of one?
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's, I tell people, if you're trying to sell to everyone, you're going to sell to nobody. And if I say, who's your favorite, what's your dream customer? They'll say, anyone with money in their pocket. Well, what you do when you try to reach everybody is you really dilute your marketing, and so you don't connect with anybody. So if I'm trying not to offend vegans, and I don't want to offend men, and I don't want to offend children or Christians, and I'm trying to not offend anybody, I'm not going to be very specific, and I'm not going to sound like a real person, whether it's my Instagram post or Facebook post or my written words, written marketing materials. So what you want to do, and I have all kinds of worksheets and things I give to people and questions to help them ask their customers to find it out, is a real short one would be, think of your very favorite customer or your favorite 2 or 3 customers and think of what they are and what it is you like about them. So for me, I have my dream customer is a combination of 2 of my customers. Also, your dream customer is a combination of some made up things, especially if you're starting your farm. You want to have your dream customer nailed down before you start your farm. And that often is hard because people will say, well, I don't have any customers. So it's okay to make an imaginary one first, and then you will adjust it over time as you get customers. But you want to narrow down, is it a man or a woman? And you might think, well, I want to sell to men and women. Well, you will sell to men and women, both. More people will be attracted to your marketing the more specific you are. So you really need to choose one. And just a side note, 80% of the buying decisions in our country are made by women. So my dream customer is a woman, but they're, if you choose a man, that's fine too. But you're going to write to a woman. Now, you want to figure out what age she is. Do you want to sell to 25-year-old women or 35-year-old women or 65-year-old women? And the marketing materials I'm going to give them are going to vary a little bit depending on it. Is it a 25 to 30-year-old woman who has 2 tiny children and a baby on the way? Or is it a 55-year-old woman whose children are gone to college and she has a little more money to spend? I'm going to send different types of marketing materials to them depending on, is it the mother of young children who's too busy to even brush her teeth some days and needs to figure out how to plan a week's worth of meals in the 1 hour spare time she has? Or is it the 55-year-old woman who can take more time to make, my recipes I send out to keep in touch with them, my stories I send out to maintain that relationship are going to look different depending on who that is, because I'm going to be very specific. However, the more people are drawn to that very specific story. So what ends up happening is I might write a very specific blog post to a 50-year-old woman, but women and men of all ages love that blog post and show up at our farm store to buy that steak or whatever it is I was talking about. So that is a really big step. And you might have heard some larger businesses talk about it as their target customer. But the smaller we can niche down, because we're a small business, the more people you will attract. So I walk people through that exercise. And the biggest fear people have is, well, if I get that specific, then I'm turning away other people. And I'm here to tell you, from working with thousands of farmers plus our own farm, the more specific and the more niche down you get on who your ideal customer is or your dream customer, the broader appeal you have. So it's really fascinating. And once that aha light goes off, people start seeing how it works on their farm to attract more customers.
Mm-hmm. I really love this idea because it automatically narrows down that sales funnel, because I've always believed that eventually time sorts through the people that are attracted to a particular farm's values or the farmer's values. And really what you're doing through this process is just taking out the time factor and having farmers directly target what the group is that associates best with their values, that are the true fans. How can farmers target these dream customers? Because I think that a lot of times people are a little confused how to do that. How do they specifically say, okay, I want to sell to women versus men because women make 80% of the buying decisions?
Well, it will start with when you're just starting your farm, or when you're in the first few years of business, or if you feel like your marketing isn't working, it means you're not connecting with enough people in person. So we have all this great technology that saves people time, and you think you can market from your office and your computer without ever leaving the house. But eventually that won't work. You've got to get out and connect with people. So, and I teach cutting edge marketing, and that when someone says, oh, I'm trying to do what you teach, but it's not working, I know they have let go of that connecting in person. So that's where you start. You start, maybe it is a booth at a farmer's market, but you start talking to people in person and really listening to them, listening to their stories, listening of how they use your product. Are they in a hurry when they come to you? Or do they have more time? Are they driving their kids to soccer practice and coaching their teams on the weekends? Or are they trying to go to yoga class? You're engaging with your customers, you're listening to all these things, and then you're creating your Facebook posts and Instagram posts and your blog posts based on these people you're connecting with. And then you continually ask, if you're doing email marketing, it's easy to say, forward this to your best friend who you know will love this story or this recipe. So you're building your community that way too. Also go to where like-minded people are, or people that you know would enjoy your product. My first set of customers when I started my farm 10 years ago were 5 other moms from my play group. Every Tuesday we showed up with our 2-year-olds. There are probably 30 or 40 moms there. And while the kids are playing, we're standing around talking, and they think I'm nuts because I'm bringing home a milk cow, but they're fascinated by that. And they're like, we want to buy milk from you. So I never would have gotten those customers if I didn't have that getting out of my house, and these people see me, they connect with me, and now all of a sudden they want to buy what I have. And then they each told friends. So pretty soon, within the first couple of weeks, I've got 20 weekly customers instead of 5. So you've often got to leave the comfort of your farm and get out and meet people. Stop into places that will use your product, or tell people about your product, and visit with other business owners. One of the greatest things farmers have going for us that we don't value enough is people love hearing what it's like to be a farmer. And we think, well, that's so boring. I wake up and I go out and I feed the chickens and it's dark out and I'm wearing a headlamp. People love hearing that stuff. So I would go to a local Rotary Club meeting at noon. They get together, they have lunch, and they want to hear from somebody interesting. So I was like, really? You just want to hear me talk about what it's like to milk 3 cows? And then I had 10 new customers the next week from that meeting. And then same with Kiwanis Club. We had a foodie type gathering at our library, and I went there and talked again. So if you just get out and find opportunities to share what you do, other people think it's far more fascinating than you think it is. And then they see you're a real person, they trust you. You build that know, like, and trust factor, and they want to come spend money on your farm. They want to support you.
I'm sorry, I just had to click a button. Otherwise, my computer was going to restart on me in 60 seconds, and you hate that to happen during an interview.
Yeah, that would be bad. No problem.
So I'm curious. So would you say that the interactions in the personal level is how farmers can compete in the modern food system?
Yes. As a matter of fact, it sounds like you've been sitting in on some of my talks. I get to speak at conferences, and often what I try to start off with is we can't compete with Amazon and Whole Foods and delivery services on price and convenience. As farmers, we will never be able to be as cheap as those places because we're small scale. We're not feedlots. Costco buys their food from feedlots. So we can't compete on price and convenience ever. So how can we compete? Well, we have something that they are not capable of doing anymore because they're too big, and it's that personal relationship. I see this in our student. I take on 100 marketing students twice a year, and the light bulb goes off at some point, and they realize, oh, I'm not marketing my heritage breed chickens and how cheap they are, or that they're more special because of this or that. The reason people are shopping with me is because they get to my farm and the kids get out and pet the cat and they have a conversation with me. We talk about their problem or their busy day, or they took their mom to a doctor's appointment and they get back in their car and they leave and they didn't even look at the price of my product. So that light bulb goes off somewhere between week 1 and 6 months, where they say, people are coming to me and for the relationship I give them. It doesn't matter what I sell. I could sell chicken today, and if I had, beef tomorrow, and they thought they were coming for chicken, it doesn't matter. What I sell and the price I sell it for doesn't matter. What they're coming for is that human connection that you don't get when you shop online. And that doesn't mean people are going to stop shopping online. But when they think of eggs, for instance, they're going to think, oh, I'm going to run over to that neighbor farmer, a few miles away or even 30 minutes away because all the things I just mentioned. So yeah, that relationship is, you will never compete on price and convenience. So you've got to figure out how to build and maintain that relationship with people, and then price doesn't even matter.
Mm-hmm. It is the relationships that matter. I used to work at a local apple orchard, and so I was fortunate because I kind of grew up with the idea of people like to go there for the experience. You can get apples cheaper elsewhere. They're there because they want to enjoy a good time with their family. And that it's nice to see a lot of farmers are shifting towards that goal, and that people such as yourself are teaching this to people. Do you find there's lots of pushback from some farmers who say, oh, I don't really want to be around people?
Yeah, and that takes some education and practice. And what I mean, I work with them sometimes for weeks on mindset shifts, but there's a few things that come to mind. For one, introvert is something that you can, with practice, it gets easier. So each time you go to the farmer's market, you will find that it will get less and less exhausting. Like, if you've been doing it for a few years, you remember back to the first year you did it, you were so exhausted after talking to people all day that it took you a week to recover. And then 5 years later, you just have to take a day off. So it gets easier. And also often because I kind of work a lot of coaching, personal coaching, and into my courses I teach. And so I remind people that we are born wanting to connect with other people. Babies from the womb want to look you in the eye and connect. Often something happens where, and I think it happens to all of us on a different, to a different extent, that, people cross our boundaries, or we don't learn to be confident enough to set boundaries. So we start to shirk down and stay away from people because we know they're going to treat us rudely anyway. So we stay in our shell, and we think we hate people, but we're born wanting that connection. So actually what they need to learn is how to set boundaries and how to be confident, how to look more confident in their booth, and people will treat them differently. So it's often not about marketing, but it's that personal development that when I teach my course, I say, you are going to develop and evolve as a person as much as your business changes. And as a matter of fact, your business won't grow and change unless you grow and change. So these are all learned skills and developmental things. So yes, hopefully that answers your question there.
Well, and I love the cyclical nature of this conversation because we started talking about how laws don't necessarily change with time and how they can become archaic. And we're kind of wrapping up here discussing that people need to learn to grow, farmers especially. We need to adapt to kind of the circumstances we're in many ways, but also grow to meet the needs of our customers. One final question I want to ask, because really I think this is the main reason I do the podcast, is talk about food, but what is your favorite dairy product or dish made with milk, and why?
Does creme brulee count?
Yes, it does.
You bake it and you destroy the probiotics. Okay, good. Creme brulee. Now, if I'm feeling indulgent or we're having special guests to dinner or whatever, I make creme brulee. It is, or if I have extra cream, like after we have a new calf, we always have an abundance of milk, and so I'll make more creme brulee. But gosh, you name it, butter. You can't go wrong with butter. I drink milk all day, kefir, yogurt. But yeah, something like creme brulee, which destroyed the probiotics, is just a favorite. Oh, you know what I made last night? Okay. I put this little recipe on Instagram. I went to the farmer's market to get local foraged chanterelles. I sauteed it in our butter and a little garlic, and then I poured some cream in so it simmered down, and then I spooned it over toast. And that is heaven.
Mm-hmm. I'm so happy to get hungry listening to the show and interviewing you. Thank you, Charlotte, so much for being on season 3 today and helping us launch it. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
Well, I'm at 3cowmarketing.com, and that's the number 3. It's not spelled out. So 3cowmarketing.com. Instagram, I'm Charlotte Smith 3Cow, and I have a wonderful Facebook group called The Profitable Farm with Charlotte Smith that is for farmers only. So it's a place where we learn and we share, and I learn as much from everyone else as they learn. You know, we're all learning. So those are probably the 3 best places to find me.
Thank you again, Charlotte, so much for being on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It is such an honor to be here.
Big thanks again to Charlotte for being on the show. You can learn more about her work by going to 3cowmarketing.com, that's 3 as in the number, and all of the socials. You can find all those links and more in the show notes. If you're a longtime listener to the podcast, please fill out our podcast survey. That would be stellar. It would help us improve the podcast in this new year. If you're new to the show, we'd love for you to subscribe via whatever your podcast player of choice is. iHeartRadio, Spotify, SoundCloud, we are on all of them. And of course, Apple Podcasts. While you're there, please leave a review, letting others know how great the show is. Thanks again for listening and sharing your valuable time with us today. This has been Terrence Lehue and the Intellectual Agrarian Podcast, reminding you to keep farming the dream.